All right, welcome everyone. Welcome. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Adobe Creative Cloud Live. My name is Terry White, and I'm here to show you what's new in the latest update of Adobe Dimension. I believe we're referring to it as 1.1. In other words, the latest dot release, which addresses several user requests and, of course, tidies up the program, just makes it run a little bit better, faster, and less problematic for those of you who are having issues with things like speed and rendering and all that. All right, so we're going to dive in just a second here. I see a bunch of you coming in the room already. Hello, Steve. Hello, Victoria. Hello, Shakat. Welcome, everyone. And we're going to go ahead and dive in right now. Let me switch over to my computer. And I've got Adobe, hey Kevin, I've got Adobe Dimension running right now, of course, with no document open. I usually like to start these wherever I can with creating something from scratch. So, hey Akil, what's going on? I'm going to go ahead and create a new document versus opening one of my existing projects that I've done before. This is where most of you will start. And when you create a new project, I'm not going to go through the whole interface because I've done that before in the live stream. I've shown how this all works. And if you need to go back and watch a replay, if you can't find it here on the Creative Cloud, you can always watch my Dimension videos at terrywhite.tv. All right, so with that said, I've got just a blank canvas open here. At the very top, I've got the built-in models, I've got the built-in materials, I've got the built-in lights. This is all stuff that comes with Dimension and hence built in. Also, I've got my Creative Cloud library open at the bottom. Hey, Rufus, what's going on, man? I've got my Creative Cloud library open at the bottom, and this Creative Cloud library has things that I put into it. In other words, the things at the top come with the application. Things at the bottom are the things that I have added to it, or added to my library that I'm going to use in this demo where I've used before. Okay, so first and foremost, let's bring an object onto the canvas. So you can either just drag and drop or just click, and that will go ahead and place the object on the canvas itself. From there, you can also reset your ground plane. In other words, the ground plane is that grid that's on the bottom here. Notice my ground plane is kind of going off in the distance, kind of high. I'm going to bring it down a bit, something like that. And of course, I can then start to manipulate the object itself. Whenever I select the selection tool, I get the ability, hang on one second here, I want to be able to see your comments. I get the ability, hey Tyra, what's going on? To move the object around. So for example, I can pick it up and float it in midair. I can push it back. I can bring it forward. So one of the new things right off the bat is you notice that, of course, when I picked it up, it's casting a shadow. That's not new. But when I go to set it back down, one of the things that was kind of not difficult, but you had to really be careful that you weren't putting your object either like slightly above the floor, so like there'd be a gap and it'd be kind of floating in midair, or worse, slightly into the floor because you couldn't really tell. So it was kind of like pushed down into the floor. So now when I drag this down, you'll notice what happens when I hit the floor. I get that little blue square and it snaps to it. So that's letting me know that object is now on the ground plane. It's not below it. It's not a millimeter or two above it. It's not floating in midair. It is on the ground. So if I were to pick it up again, another way to do this, there's a button right here on the actions panel on the right-hand side. This button, which looks like it's going to do exactly what it does, put your object instantly on the ground. So if I just click it, boom, I don't have to worry about dragging it, waiting for the blue square, getting it just right. That allows me to quickly and easily just put it right on the ground. So if you pick something up, you want it to be on the ground plane, that's one of the fastest ways to do it. So if I move it around, and again, I'm not sure where the ground plane is, click, boom, it's on the ground plane. Simple things, but makes our life easier. Next thing, I'm going to grab the rotation because rotation has been updated as well. Now, normally before this update, if you were to start rotating your object, it would let you rotate it any way you want it. Now, it's keeping to 1 degree increments by default. as opposed to 1.1, 1.2, very finite increments. I'm going to show you how to get to those in a minute. But now as I rotate this, it will, as you can see, the number is just increasing, going from 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10, 1 degree at a time. If I want to quickly get to 15 degree increments, I can hold down my shift key and it will pop to 15 degree increments. And that way I can get it exactly rotated where I need it to be. Now, if you are still wanting those very finite degrees where it's like not 1, it's not 2, you need something in between, you can still do that by holding down the Command key on the Mac, the PC Control key. That basically reverts it back to the previous behavior where you can rotate it any way you want. And that way you get it exactly where you need it to be. Okay, so and let me get my notes up so I make sure I'm not skipping a feature. So we talked about the snapping to the ground. We talked about the rotation, talked about holding down Command. The next one, I'm probably, like of all these little things, I'm probably the most excited about what I'm going to show you next. So let me, let's just do this a couple different ways. Let me get a bottle onto the screen as well. So I'm going to use one of the default bottles that comes with the application. There it is, and I'm going to switch to my move tool here. I can pick it up again. I can, just like before, put that on the ground. I can move it around, get it wherever I want. Now, actually, before I show you my most exciting favorite thing, I don't know if it's exciting, but favorite, if you have colors, whether they're in your library or wherever you have them, you can drag and drop those color swatches easier now onto your objects or onto the background. So for example, if I need the background to be this lighter blue color, just drag it onto the background. Now my background is that color. So I don't have to use an image. I just use a color if I want. I can also use those colors to color my object. So now I have a red bottle. And if I need it, let's see if the cap's separate. I'm not sure. Okay, it didn't, I'd have to separate the cap out to do that or select it separately to do that. But ooh, I kind of like the gold anyway. I like the gold bottle. So, color swatches. That's another new update. The next, or the way they work. The next thing is the ability to apply your decals or images onto your object. So, for example, I went in Photoshop real quick right before the stream and created a label for my new brand of soda. And I'm going to apply that label to it. This is in my library. You can also import things from the menu, but I'm just going to drag it over and that will apply it. Now, of course, I made the label too small for this can. As before, you could just hold down the Shift key and scale it up. And of course, that is in 3D. So now if I switch to the rotation tool, I can go ahead and rotate that around, spin it around so we can see we have the Wild, which has great taste and zero fear. All right, so that's my new brand of soda. But now, let's say that I'm looking at that label now that I've got it in the canvas, and I'm not happy with, like, it's kind of dark. It doesn't look right. So, of course, I could go over and mess with the lighting of the scene. I could adjust the lighting, the metallic materials of the can, so forth and so on. But maybe I just want to change the label itself. I want to make the label look the way I want it to look. Now you have the ability to drill down to the decal of whatever object you have the decal on. So when I click on decal, I'm over here on the right-hand side. When I click on the decal, that will show me down here in properties the label that's on that decal. So now I can click the label. That will give me a little preview of it. And it will also allow me to edit the label. There's now an edit button right here, and that will round trip you over to Photoshop so you can work on whatever you want to work on and then come back and it will already be updated. So here, let me click the label. I already got Photoshop running. Boom, that opens up the label. And now, and I want to point this out. This is important. I originally pulled that label from my library. This label is not the same one that's in the library. So any changes I make here only affect the one that's in Dimension. Does not affect the original, which is the way I'd want it. I don't want to mess up my original. I just want to do things different to this particular label for this instance in Dimension itself. Now I'm going to pull this over so you can see it happen. So I got Photoshop in the foreground. I've got Dimension in the background with a label. Let's say I just bring up my levels. And in my levels command, I just hit Command L in Photoshop, and I just want to adjust the midtones to be brighter. So that's significantly brighter so you guys can see it. I click OK, and I hit Save. And as soon as I hit Save, boom, it updates the can. So it's a excuse me. It's a live update that I can apply at any given time. So for example, let's say I wanted to apply something else. I have to move it over so I can see what I'm doing. Let's say I go to my Adobe Dimension library, the same one I was working in Dimension. I drag over the Dimension logo itself, and I put that at the top of my logo. Of course, we don't need it to be that big. And we do something like that. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and flatten it down. I don't know that it will support layers. I haven't tried that yet, but I'll flatten it down. And now as soon as I hit Save, that decal appears. And look at it. It's a decal, so it wraps it around the can and gives it that metallic look. So you can continue prototyping, getting your decal or label or whatever it is you're wrapping around your object just right while you're looking at it, either on a separate display or in the background, just like I've got it here. Keep making changes, keep hitting Save, and you will see it update live. That I'm extremely, I don't know what other adjective I can use, but very excited about. So, because that makes all the difference in the world. I don't have to go back, recreate, or work on the label, save it, update the library, repost it onto the image. I just keep working on the label till I get it to look the way I want it to look. Boom, it updates, and away we go. All right, so now I can go back to Dimension. And let's talk about, let's do this first. I'm going to talk about my second favorite thing. Let's go ahead. I'm zooming in for a second here. Let's talk about selections. So let's grab the bottle again. Let's pick the bottle up and move it over here. One of the things that was, I won't say difficult, but certainly not as easy as it should have been, was making selections of things. When you had a lot of things on the canvas, and you wanted to select a bunch of things, you would have to hold down your Shift key and click on every single thing you want to select so you can move it or do something to it. In every other application in the world, you've got a marquee selection. You can just drag around a bunch of objects, they all get selected, then you do whatever you want to do with it. So the marquee selection has made its way to Dimension. So if I just drag and encompass my selection, just touching any one of those things, I now have selected both of them. And I can move them in the 3D space and get them where I want. All right, so that's cool, but maybe I don't need to select everything. Okay, so I've got my selection tool selected, and there's two options turned on. There's Group Select, and then there is Partial Marquee Select. So we just did the Partial Marquee Select, which means I didn't have to select the whole bottle or the whole can in order for it to work. It knew that, hey, you kind of touch those objects, it knew to grab everything. However, if I turn those, and the group, of course, selects the whole bottle or the whole can if it was multiple pieces. So you kind of want both of those on by default, but sometimes you may not want both things or you may not need both of them. So for example, you can toggle each one on and off. So now it wouldn't select the whole group, it would only marquee around whatever I select. I can turn off the partial selection too, so what's that do if you turn them both off? Well, for example, maybe I want to just select this. And hold on, there we go. So I selected the cap. And now I can pick the cap up and move it over. Let's get it in place first. There we go. And of course, we can put that on the ground. So now I've got the cap, and the cap is totally separate. And of course, I can just easily marquee pieces of a 3D object, or 3D model, I should say, and just affect those pieces. And by the way, one more thing, or two more things that got updated. Number one is when you are working with glass objects. So I've got a glass decanter here. People really weren't happy with the way the decanter looked until it was rendered. Like, it doesn't look like glass to me. It looks like, you know, kind of black pieces in the glass. And that's because it's not rendered out. And that's fine. I can live with that. But even when they were doing the render preview, they weren't getting the look they wanted. Oh, and I got one more thing, by the way, after this. Oh, hold on. Let's hold on the Shift key so we can scale that proportionally. So, two things. Well, this. One more thing after that. Yeah, two more things at least, maybe three. So, now when you go in your render preview, the glass looks like glass. So, yay! I don't have to guess anymore as to what that will look like. So if we zoom in on that so you can see it, looks like a beautiful glass decanter will happen when I render this out. So that happens just now automatically. So you got a better rendering preview of glass. The next one is the one that I can't believe I was gonna forget, and I'm glad I didn't forget it. Let's go ahead and let's see if we can do this. I'm going to put this behind here. Oh, but you know what? Before we do that, let's put a label on that one too. Or decal. I keep wanting to call them labels. Technically in the program, they're called decals. So let's just use the same fashion. Oh, you know what? We'll make a Creative Cloud bottle. So grab the Creative Cloud logo, just drag it on there. Now I've got my Creative Cloud bottle. I can, of course, make that logo bigger, smaller. Smaller is better. Pull it down, get it where I want it. And of course, that works in 3D as well. So if I deselect, select the object, I can rotate that around and we can see the back of it and that it doesn't completely go around, but there we go. We've got our bottle. Now that I've got the bottle in place, or now I've got the bottle with a label on it or decal on it, I'm gonna move it behind these objects. And the reason I created the reason I gave it a decal, because the next thing I'm going to show you you really wouldn't be able to tell unless there was something on it. So let me grab my zoom tool, or not my zoom, but my scale tool. Let's scale that bottle up, make it a little bit bigger. The glass decanter won't matter because it doesn't have anything on it yet. But now I'm going to deselect everything. And you'll notice that in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a new thing called focus. Now focus, the term is new in this program, but the feature is not. This used to be, in previous version 1.0, this used to be depth of field. So my photographers watching know exactly what that means. Graphic designers may not know what that means. And basically depth of field or shallow depth of field is what you get when you shoot with a lens at like a wide open aperture. What that means is that you're going to get the main subject in focus and everything behind it or off in the distance is out of focus. And that's the way our eyes see things. When we focus our eyes on a thing that's up close, we can still see the thing in the background, but it's kind of out of focus until we focus our eyes on that. And then maybe the thing in the front may be out of focus. So depth of field is something we do naturally. It's something that professional photographers do naturally with higher end camera gear. Apple even fakes it with the portrait mode on your iPhones. So depth of field is important. It's definitely important when we're doing product design or product compositing. So for example, if I turn on focus for this scene, now you need the preview window open because it doesn't preview it on the canvas. It previews it in the render preview. But even if I forgot to do it, which I did, if I forgot to do it, normally it would pop it open the first time to remind you that you need to see it. So what it's showing me now is the updated preview, and I've got just a small blur amount, and it's so small you can barely see it. You can't really tell what's going on. So first of all, you notice that there's a focus point here, and I can go ahead and I can set the focus point. So I can click what I want to be in focus, very much like you do on your camera. You move the little dot or square or rounded rectangle around till you get what you want in focus. You press halfway, it focuses on that. Everything else is out of focus. So we're doing the same thing here. I'm going to set my focus point on the can. And now when I increase the blur amount, which you can control with this slider, basically it's now going to render everything else. And I did more than you would normally do, but you can see how blurry that Creative Cloud logo is getting now. The can is in focus. Everything else behind it is really out of focus because I've got too much blur on it. But that's what this does. So if I turn down the blur, let's maybe not do that much. It'll re-render it, and the Creative Cloud logo won't be as blurry. But that's the way it would render. Now, I'm going to go ahead and zoom this up so you can see it now that we've talked about it, so you can kind of see it start to render this all out. And again, this is a render preview. This is not indicative of the final quality render. This is just kind of showing you what you might get when you do this. Rick Miller's in the house. What's going on, Rick? All right, so again, this is like a rough render preview, but you can see the Dimension Wild Soda is in focus, and the Creative Cloud is out of focus, and the decanter is kind of in focus because it's right up next to the can. If I put the decanter further back, it would automatically go out of focus because the focus point is on the can itself. So we could try that. For example, we can click on this, and we could move this back. There we go. And now if we were to look at that same render preview and let it update, the glass decanter will, once it starts to preview, as you can see, very soft focus on that because it's now behind, it's further back off into the distance. So you can control that amount of blur, and you will also get more blur based on how far back you put things. And that will also work on your main image that you have as your background as well. And of course, this is a checkbox. You do not have to use the depth of field. If you want everything to stay in focus, turn that checkbox off and everything remains completely in focus. So with that said, these are the updates to Adobe Dimension. And by the way, for those of you who are new to Dimension, if you were to use a background image, like I've got this, that's not one of my favorite backgrounds, but we can use it. So I've got this woman that's shopping or walking down the street with shopping bags, I should say. Now, as soon as I drop that in or click on it, Dimension starts to analyze it and say, hey, do you want me to fix all this for you? Do you want me to resize the image down, match the image aspect ratio? Do you want me to create a lighting based on your background? Do you want me to match the sunlight? Do you want me to match the camera perspective? Absolutely. I would never not want you to do all those things. So once I do all those things, then it will start to do all of those things. And of course, the lighting is coming from the back. So that's why all this stuff is now dark. I can change the lighting. I can rearrange all of that in the environment settings here in Dimension. And of course, the ground plane was the ground plane that we had. So it kind of adjusted it, but not enough. If I wanted to pull the ground plane down more to where her feet are, to where the ground plane looks more realistic, then those objects start to look like they're on the same ground plane that she's on. Of course, I'd have to move the can that's in front back further, but you get the idea. It is now matching everything from the scene. So for example, if I pick this up and move it over, it should get smaller, but it's also starting to get a little bit more light from that stuff over there. So the reflections, the shadows, everything's working automatically. All right, Jim just arrived. He's asking, will this be playing again? I'm about to end, so you can watch the replay in about 30 seconds. So with that said, everyone, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for coming in. If you want to learn about illustration, you can head over to, let me make sure I've got this set up. You can head over to behance.net/live for Adobe Live. They're doing 3 days of illustration this week, and they're going on right now. It's about 1:24 Pacific time, so they'll be going to 5 p.m. Pacific time yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So you got from 9 to 5 tomorrow if you don't have time to watch it today. Hey, Anna, you're just in time to miss me. Chantel, glad this helped. And Stefan, I feel your pain. I want to save it too, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that. All right, so with that said, everyone, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Head over to behance.net/live if you want to watch more stuff. Cheers, everybody. Take care.